Hello, everybody. We'll talk about my background picture at the end. I think I've mentioned it before anyway. So today we'll talk about the idea of actually prostrating ourselves or falling on our face during the Tachnun, Nefillat Appayim. And so this is a little bit of a historic. We talked about the Zohar before, but there's a few other pieces of information that are important to understand the history. So at first, it was customary to perform the Nefillat Appayim prayer by prostrating or by bowing down. Prostration means that the person drops his whole body to the ground and spreads out his hands and feet as they did in the temple and as a lot of Jews do on Yom Kippur during the Avodah. Bowing down means that the person bowing means that the person gets down on his knees, bends his head forward, and rests it down on the ground. So that's just a description of what the two different things, hishtachavaya and prostration. However, due to a number of concerns, the custom to pray in Nefillat Appayim by bowing down or prostrating himself on the ground was annulled. Some of the reasons are halachic, dealing with the prohibition against prostrating oneself on a stone floor. So if you remember from Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah when we bow during Aleinu, a lot of people put either a towel or a napkin separating between their head and the floor. And that's how I grew up. And again, the idea is because of the stone, because it says in Devarim, I think it's in Parshat Kitetze, but I'm not 100% sure. It says that the Even Maskit Lo Titnu B'Artzachem, that a stone that is used for idol worship, you're not allowed to place in your land. And there was a service called Markulis where they would actually throw the stone at the idol, and whoever was closest was praised for their worship. So again, stones are not a Jewish thing. And the other prohibition is of an important person falling on his face before the congregation without a guarantee that he will be answered like Yoshua bin Nun. So imagine if the whole community is bowing down, and the rabbi or the leader is not. Uh, People might think, oh, you don't do what we do. You don't do the Jewish custom. So that's why, in order for everybody to be more or less not questioned during this process, they just annulled it. And still, the main reason we talked a little bit yesterday about the contradiction between halacha and Kabbalah. So the main reason is written in the Zohar, which greatly reinforces the virtue of Nefillat Appayim, during which the person praying must sacrifice his soul to Hashem and view himself as if he has left the world, thereby atoning for all his sins. This restorative act must be performed with great kavanah of one's heart. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has mercy on him and absolves his sin. Great is the person who knows how to entice his master and eagerly serve him with kavanah of the heart, avodat halev. Woe to the one who entices his master with a distant heart, bereft of desire. As it is written in Psalms, they beguiled him with their mouths and lied to him with their tongues, for their heart was untrue to him. So basically, that we speak with our mouth, but we don't really mean it in our heart. And he says, I lift my soul up to you. But his words emanate from a distant heart, and that causes him to leave this world before his time. So because of the danger of somebody dying because they're pretending to be with kavanah, uh, because because every sacrifice is supposed to be accepted, we don't want to die every time that we say tachan. I mean, I guess it happens once and that's it. Since we are concerned that perhaps we are unable to have the necessary full kavanah and concentration and are unworthy, we refrain from prostrating ourselves or from bowing down. So I'll just compare that to something else in halacha, not related, but it might clarify this point. Um, the Torah says very clearly in the third paragraph of the Shema that we must put a ptil tchelet, a light blue string, on our tzitzit. Today, there's two opinions of to what the tchelet actually is. The Rajiner and Dr. Herzog, I think he's the uh, uncle of the president of Israel now, or somehow related. Um, and so, since we don't really know for sure which one is the tchelet, the rabbis already in the Talmud and Menachot said you don't have to wear the tchelet. And so the way that they termed it was התכלת אינו מעכב את הלבן, והלבן אינו מעכב את התכלת, meaning that the tchelet does not restrict you from having the white string, and vice versa. So if you have only white strings, that is permissible. So the same thing here. On the one hand, Nefillat Appayim is an amazing way of coming close to Hashem. On the other hand, if we don't have the right kavanah, we're basically risking our life, and so it's better to avoid it, since it's not a commandment. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that you have to bow anywhere other than the temple. In the temple, it actually says on Sukkot that, oh, the grandfather, thank you, Rabbi. And so Dr. Herzog was the grandfather of the president. And so it's better to not do something than to do something and risk our life, the same way like the tzitzit. In practice, it is the custom of all Ashkenazim and some Sephardim to bend down and cover their faces on the shirt sleeve of their arm. By doing so, one maintains a certain aspect of Nefillat Appayim, so that for that is a type of bow, yet it is not a complete bow, and there is no fear of prostrating on a stone floor. Still, he said the word shirt sleeve, because when we have tefillin on in the morning, we bow our head down on the shirt sleeve that doesn't have the tefillin, because it would not be appropriate to rest our head on even though it's just the straps of the tefillin. So in Shacharis, we'll learn it later. In Shacharis, we bow down on our right arm, because that's the arm for those who are righties. Yes, and in Mincha, we bow down on our left arm. So this is a type of bow, and we're not afraid of the stone floor. Perhaps so as not to encounter the danger mentioned in the Zohar, Ashkenazim were accustomed not to recite the psalm Elecha Hashem Nafshi Esla, I lift my soul to you, which is Psalm 25, which is explained in the Zohar to mean the surrender of one's soul, and like I said, causing maybe death, and instead they recite Psalm 6, and that's in the Magen Avraham. Those who follow the Ben Ish Chai are careful not to fall on their faces at all, and that is how many people from Edot Mizrach, which is the Sephardim and those who are in the Levant, practice. So I'll stop the share just so you can see my background. I can reverse, maybe not. So it says, does anyone else feel like we're just going in big circle? And of course, the circle is the Star of David. So it's a religious Israeli guy who writes cartoons for the National Post. So it can be found online, but this is from a few years ago. And the reason I brought it here is because in the desert, which is we're now jumping ahead. Parshat Chukat jumps ahead from the beginning of Bamidbar from year 2 to year 40. Miriam dies on the first of the first month of the 40th year. And then Aaron also in our Parsha dies 4 months later on the first of Av. And so when the Jewish people were in the desert, they always had direction. They always knew what they have to do. So if Hashem said, bow on your face, they did. If Hashem said, come see me, or come see Moses, they did. If Hashem said, blow the trumpets so we can start moving, they did. It was all very, very clear, and we weren't robots, but we also didn't have much free choice. Like a person couldn't just wander off and say, I want to visit, the Petra, right? I want to go see the red mountains. Obviously, the Nubians were not there yet. I'm just saying as an example, they couldn't just get off and go on vacation when they were in the desert. And the desert was, on the one hand, a very safe experience, but on the other hand, 38 years of this, because like I said, we're jumping from year 2 to year 40. 38 years of this couldn't have been very settling. And so they got used to a certain routine. They saw that their clothing are not getting ruined. They saw that the man continued happening for all that time. And so the crisis in this week's parsha of we need water it's the last time that we see that Moses fell on his face. Every other time afterwards, he just contacted Hashem and said, what should we do? So the daughters of Tzlofchad are in 2 weeks' time, and then the sons of Reuben and Gad in the week after that. So all the problems were gone, and this is like the last time that the people complained. And this time I'll say it as carefully as possible. Moshe and Aaron who didn't do exactly what Hashem said to do. And so that's why we believe they were punished. We don't know exactly what their sin was, but you can understand that after 40 years in the desert, you don't remember anymore what is right and what is wrong because you're so used to behaving in a certain way. We didn't share with our friends, where were you on vacation last week? I wasn't. I was in the next tent over. So I think that that's a beautiful way of learning about Nefillat Appayim, that it's just another way of expressing ourselves and our free will to choose, how close we want to get to Hashem, as opposed to when everything is redirected and so almost automatic. So we'll stop the recording here.